The video we're going to be looking at today is about one whole. And one whole is one of the most important things students need to understand when we come to mathematics. You can represent one whole in a number of ways. You can represent it as a circle, you can represent it as a square, you can represent it as a triangle. You can draw a visual representation of one whole any way you want. We're going to use a circle for most of this because that's what kids are kind of used to from the previous grades. Just like you can represent one whole with different pictures, like a circle, a square, or a triangle, you can also name one whole different ways. You could name it as a fraction, like 2 out of 2, or 3/3, or 4/4. You can name it as a decimal, 1.00, for example. Or you can also name it as degrees of a circle. People who skateboard know that a 360, the trick means that you go around 360 degrees. You could also name one whole as anything else you want, like the whole price of a pair of pants or the whole price of a cup of coffee, for example. Another thing that you could do is you could represent one whole as 100%.
The next thing that we have to consider is that once you name them two halves, 1.0, 360, a cup of coffee, or 100%, those things are all equal to each other. Why? Because they're all one whole. So 2 halves is 1.0, 1.00 is 360 degrees, is the cup of coffee, is 100%. All we have then are different names for the same thing, one whole. Now that we understand that we can name them different ways, the other thing that you need to understand is what you do to a fraction, you have to do to a decimal, you have to do to degrees, and you have to do to percent. Why? Because they're all equal to each other. So, if I take my fraction and I cut it in half, I'll get a half on the top and a half on the bottom. Because I have to do the same thing, I have to cut the decimal in half. So 1.00 cut in half is going to give me decimal 50 in the top and decimal 50 in the bottom. If I take my degrees and I take 360 and cut it in half, I get 180 degrees in the top and 180 in the bottom. Same with percents. I'll end up with 50 and 50%. Now that we know all that stuff, let's try an actual question. What's 50% of $3? Well, in order to do this, we're going to need two one wholes. We need a percent one whole, and we're going to need a money one whole. We're going to represent them with the circles like I said before. So, we've got 100% represented as a circle, and we're going to have $3 represented as a circle. Why? Because we need to understand that 100% of the money is the $3. Now, in order to get the 50%, we have to cut the 100% in half. But don't forget, because these two circles are really different names for the same thing, if I cut the percent circle in half, I've got to cut the money circle in half as well. So what does that tell us? Well, we're going to get 50% in the top. We're going to get 50% in the bottom on the percent side. On the money side, if we cut $3 in half, we're going to divide it by 2. So we're going to have $1.50 in the top, $1.50 in the bottom. Now that we've done that, we can answer the question because all we need to do is take 50% of the first circle, you take 50% of the second circle, and that's $1.50. Let's try another question. What is decimal 25 of 100%? In this case, we need two other circles. First circle is going to be a decimal circle, and the next circle is going to be a percent circle. Now, don't forget, because they both represent one whole, they're equal to each other. Only thing we have to think about to solve this problem is, how do you cut 1.00 up so that each piece is worth decimal 25? Whatever you do to that decimal side, you got to cut up the percent side the exact same way. And when you do that, you'll be able to figure out what decimal 25 of 100% is. So let's take a look at that. Take the decimal circle, and we're going to cut it up into 4 pieces. When you take 1.00 and divide it by 4, each piece ends up being decimal 25. Now don't forget, if we cut up the decimal circle into 4, we got to cut the percent circle into 4. Why? Because they're exactly the same thing. So let's cut the percent circle up. When we take 100% and cut it into 4 pieces, each piece is worth 25%. So, we got the answer to our problem. What is decimal 25 of 100%? Well, if we color in decimal 25 on this side, we're going to color in 25% on the other. Those two things are the same. So, decimal 25 is equal to 25%. Try these 3 questions.